Some of the most hostile environments on Earth should have erased Viking wood long ago. Salt spray, freezing rain, damp soil, insects and constant wind should have reduced their ships, halls and storehouses to compost. Instead, wooden structures and components made over 1,000 years ago still survive in Scandinavia, the British Isles and the North Atlantic. This did not happen by accident. Viking builders followed a system rooted in observation, biology and long experience. They did not try to seal wood away from nature. They worked with natural processes and bent them in their favour. If you care about real historical craft or long-term survival skills, what follows is not folklore. It is a working system that can still be applied today. The Vikings began preservation before the tree ever hit the ground. Viking wood preservation started with timing. Trees were felled in late autumn or winter when sap content was at its lowest. Sap contains sugars that attract insects and feed decay fungi. By cutting trees during dormancy, Viking builders reduced internal food sources for rot before construction even began. This single decision dramatically increased lifespan. A modern application is simple. If you cut your own timber, harvest only during the cold season or dry dormant months in your region. Avoid spring and early summer cutting if longevity matters. This step costs nothing and outperforms many modern treatments. After felling, logs were not rushed into use. They were left to season slowly in open air, protected from direct rain but fully exposed to wind. This allowed moisture to leave the wood evenly, preventing internal cracking while preserving natural resins. Quick drying was avoided because it weakens the internal structure and opens pathways for decay. Fire was used as a protective tool, not a destructive force. One of the most misunderstood Viking techniques was controlled charring. Wood that would face soil contact, water splash, or constant weather exposure was lightly burned on the surface. This did not weaken the beam. It transformed the outer layer into a carbon-rich barrier that insects could not digest, and fungi struggled to penetrate. This method is still visible on preserved post-ship components and building foundations. The charred layer repelled moisture while sealing the grain. Unlike modern coatings, it did not trap water inside. To use this today, lightly burn the surface of posts or beams until they blacken, then brush off loose ash. The goal is not deep burning, but surface transformation. This is especially effective for fence posts, shed supports, and outdoor framing. Pine tar was the backbone of Viking wood survival. The most powerful Viking preservative was pine tar, produced by slowly heating resin-rich pine roots and wood in oxygen-poor pits. This process extracted thick, sticky tar loaded with natural antifungal and water-repelling compounds. Pine tar penetrated deep into the wood, unlike surface sealants that sit on top. Viking ships, roof shingles, walls and tools were repeatedly treated with pine tar. It remained flexible in cold weather and allowed wood to breathe while shedding rain. This prevented cracking and internal moisture build-up. A modern method follows the same principle. Warm traditional pine tar until it flows, then brush it onto fully dry wood. Multiple thin coats over several days allow deep absorption. Mixing pine tar with boiled linseed oil improves penetration and drying time, a method used in later Nordic tradition. This treatment is still superior to most modern outdoor finishes for longevity. The Vikings used chemistry without knowing its name. Viking builders frequently used oak pine and other tannin-rich woods alongside iron fasteners. When iron reacts with tannins, it forms iron tannate, a compound hostile to decay organisms. This chemical reaction strengthened the wood around nails, clamps and fittings. This explains why oak beams around iron hardware in Viking-age buildings often remain solid centuries later. The metal was not a weakness. It was part of the preservation system. This can be applied today by pairing untreated iron with tannin-rich woods or by pre-treating wood with iron solutions. Iron scraps soaked in vinegar create a liquid that, when brushed onto oak or chestnut, triggers the same reaction. The resulting darkened wood is, chemically resistant to rot. Design decisions mattered as much as treatments. Viking structures survived because, water was never allowed to linger. Roofs were steep, overhangs were generous, and beams were raised on stone rather than buried in soil. End grain was protected by joints and caps instead of being left exposed. Airflow was always prioritized. Buildings were designed to dry quickly after rain, not to be sealed airtight. This philosophy prevented the stable damp conditions fungi require. Modern builders can apply this by ensuring wood never sits directly in soil, by allowing ventilation under floors, and by designing structures that shed water immediately. Preservation begins with design, not products. So, why does this knowledge still matter today? Well, it's because the wisdom of the Vikings continues to offer solutions to challenges we still encounter, even now. Viking wood preservation was not at all primitive. In fact, it was efficient, renewable, and remarkably resilient. It required no industrial supply chains, and certainly no synthetic chemicals. In an age where modern treated wood can often fail within just a few decades, these age-old methods offer something rare: durability, backed by centuries of solid evidence. For homesteaders, survivalists, restorers, and honestly serious history enthusiasts, Viking techniques provide tools that still work under real conditions. They're not just trends, they are tested systems that have truly stood the test of time. So, if this guide has deepened your understanding of how the past solved problems we still face today, do consider subscribing to The Beginning for more grounded practical history. And please share this with anyone who builds, restores, or values knowledge that lasts far longer than mere convenience. Remember, history only becomes powerful when it is actually used.